for now, to finish this first approximation of what the idea of cinema was, there's something I didn't really discuss, although it is, and you probably thought of it, very, very fundamental in this idea of total cinema, is what is exactly this imprint, this contact, first contact or co-presence between the image and the object of the image. What does it consist of, and in what way can it be considered an imprint, a material imprint? And this is really where the difficulty and the paradox lies, because it's not an imprint as a stamp, clay, or as a digital finger in ink. It's not contact as such. The imprint is an imprint through and by light, for photography as well as cinema, of course. But light is certainly no banal kind of matter. It's not the ordinary type of matter when you think of matter. Because when you think of matter, you usually think of solid matter, something that you can touch, something that has a weight and a volume, something that can be grasped literally and physically. Light is no such thing. And light has a long history in human knowledge and thinking, a long history of ambiguity, ontological ambiguity. Not only ambiguity in the knowledge we can have of light and through light, but ambiguity of light itself considered as a thing, a substance, an essence, a body, or immaterial phenomenon. As you know, for a long time, a very long time, light was not considered as matter at all. And even today, the material substratum of light is highly problematic. It is both, as you know, in this sort of ontological duplicity, you could say. It is both a wave and a series of microscopic particles called a photon. But the photon itself is not a thing. It's certainly not something that you can touch or weigh. It has no mass, and it's, in a way, a theoretical object that is never really present as such. So is the wave. And this ambiguous ontological status of light is only one aspect of the ambiguities of all the luminous phenomenon for human science and philosophy, and has always been very paradoxical. In a way, light was always thought of something in between matter and what you would call, how to call it, in matter or non-matter, spiritual being. And it was always considered as both the medium through which everything appears, and in a way through which all beings manifest. So that you could say that light is the element of what you could call ontophany, manifestation of being. It's the excellent medium, the best medium, and the best example and model and general metaphor, always present as a metaphor for knowledge and for manifestation, as you well know. It's always a matter when you speak of knowledge, of acquaintance with beings, the luminous element is always there as a metaphor, as an image. You need more light, you need to lighten, to put light, to put into light. So it's the model for all these fundamental activities or passivities of knowledge. But it's also evasive, elusive element, extremely elusive, extremely mysterious, and extremely, how do you say, subject to disappearing and evanescing, and in a way the medium of the evanescence of things as well as the medium of appearance, appearing things. That is, light reveals things, but it also in a way makes them immaterial and volatile. That is, what you see is not a material thing, what you see is an image, and the image itself is in a way a non-being or a hardly being substance, phenomenon that has no substance, or that is no substance. And this is also why light was always in the philosophical tradition, our tradition, but you could say the same of Arabic optic traditions, or even Eastern thinking about light. It's always the place where illusion, deception, non-being, pretending to be errors occur. Optical illusion has always been the most common example of error, mistakes, deception from the senses and nature dematerialized in a way by light. So light is a dematerializing force as well as a revealing element. So to summarize that in one formula, you could say that light is the dominant scheme, or you say scheme, I think in the Kantian sense. You know what I mean? Scheme. It is not an image, but a method to make an image, a method to create images. So it's the dominant scheme for appearing and knowing. And in the Platonician tradition of philosophy, the essence of things is precisely what escapes light, what escapes the appearance through light and through vision, as through the other senses, but vision has always been, the privileged sense in both negative and positive accounts of knowledge. It's privilege as a model for theory and contemplation, but it's also a privilege as a model for error, mistakes, and illusions created through light and shadow and images. So the philosophical tradition from Plato would naturally be extremely defiant of such mimetic technique as cinema, as it is defiant of any visual representation, as it takes only the outside illusory appearance of things and not the real substance of things. In another way, Bergson expresses the same defiance, although it's not from an exactly Platonician point of view. He's not thinking of a stable, ideal substance of thing, but the the substance of all being and all life being this inner movement and inner duration also escapes radically all the appearing images that you can take from life through light, through lighting. So in both these philosophical perspective, Platonician perspective or the Bergsonian perspective, in another way, the light medium as a basis of total cinema is extremely problematic and unreliable, to say the least. So there is a very weak point here, like the talon d'Achille of this theory of total cinema as ideal, integral representation of life. That is, it's all based on the effects of light, and these effects are notoriously ambiguous and unreliable. On the other hand, you still have, from the very same tradition of philosophical discourse on knowing and metaphors of light, you still have also these strong beliefs or prejudices that associate light with revelation, truth, and even mystic, spiritual truth of the beings that surround us. So that if there is a kind of implicit theology of cinema, I think there is, it can also be nourished in a way by this long tradition of luminous illuminations and illumination revelations from God or from the inner reality of being. And in a larger tradition than just philosophy, that we could call theosophy, that is, in between metaphysical speculation and particular beliefs, religious beliefs, theosophy from the Hermetic tradition of magic and ancient Egypt to Neoplatonician speculation is usually basically a luminous account of knowledge. And it's light is the major element that organizes all philosophical thinking. The diffusion of light, the fact that it's both material and immaterial, that it can have a source, but it can be everywhere without being somewhere in particular. All these strange and paradoxical characteristics are perfect to give images to things that are not material and that cannot be seen, that is spiritual. That is the diffusion of God's power, the procession of God from the highest form to the lowest forms of being through a kind of lightning, diffusion of light, the fact that light can be dimmer at the end, lose some of its strength and become stronger in the source. All these metaphorical system, in a way, is inseparable from the theosophical speculations and beliefs. And in a way, cinema can be considered in this perspective as a continuation of these beliefs, or a material expression of such beliefs about revelation and salvation of being and beings through their luminous counterparts or equivalents. religious speculations, it's not so much for the idea of God that is central to them, but for the kind of general ontological constructions that they imply. And it's well known that in Neoplatonistic traditions of philosophy and religion, once there is a description, once the purely theological core is developed, it has to create a whole pyramid of organized degrees of reality, so that you cannot think God if you don't think all the creatures and their different types and hierarchy and the way God is present in them or not, etc. So that theology, in this sense, cannot exist without being a general ontology, that is a general conception of being in all kinds of beings, in all forms of beings in nature. So that in the same way, the general ontology in theosophy or in metaphysical religious tradition, this general ontology is implied and necessary, even if it's not explicit, just as the general idea of cinema is present and implied, even if it's not explicitly in the aesthetic project of cinema, aesthetic basic assumption of cinema. That is, it's not only about how to represent things, but it's also about what things are and how they are and how the image can be faithful to their being and how they can be saved through their appearance, in the case of cinema. So this was the only point I wanted to make with this reference to theology, that is, the idea of cinema invokes and sets in motion and triggers, in a way, a whole ontology, a general ontology, and precisely to be precise and concrete, it implies you could say a re-ontologization of mimesis. That is, mimesis, traditionally conceived as imitation of nature, is now not only imitation of nature, but it's imitation through taking from nature a trophy, a part of its being, through the process of light impression. Mimesis is now ontologically charged as such, that is, a photograph keeps in itself a part of the being which was present when the photograph was taken. And as such, to be trivial and simple, a film with Betty Davis contains Betty Davis and contains at least part of the real Betty Davis, not only the character but the actress and the material world that was filmed around it, and the material existence of all things is in a way present, really present, and preserved, and saved in the film itself. And this adhering conception. Literally nothing is taken from the object, you're right. That is, when you film, you're not diminished after you've been filmed. But I would argue that the fantasy of being deprived of something, of sacrificing something, is very important and very present in the whole history of visual media. And in a way, it's a metaphor, it's not real, but still, you could argue that the whole culture that we have is post-cinematic culture, really, that we have of constant video image of everything, and fame and instant and ephemeral celebrity with the moving image, in a way, I think we all believe that once you've been on TV, for instance, you've burned something of your own being. Am I wrong? There is this fear, and in a way justified fear, that you're being exposed through the moving image also takes something away from you, although it's not clear what or why. But exposure is a burning in a way. It's not harmless as it should be. But I'm not directly answering the question. Obviously, no. When you take an image, you don't really take something. But as you know, there has been these fantasies about painting and representation always, that maybe something is taken, something is,
what about the fantasy of the cinematographer or the photographer taking from as well? I mean, there's the fantasy of, or fear of giving something up, and then there's just the voyeuristic nature and everything. We're like collectors of, we feel like we have a piece of everyone.
Well, I think it's true. It's true, because you know that you cannot trust your memory for the details of the movement and reality of everything happening. And if you have a film, a year or two later, the film is really the only thing that is left of something that happened. And in a way, it is ontologically very charged. It's not just a reflection, although it is. It's more than a reflection, because time annihilates everything. This is what Bazin says. That time does destroy everything, so that something that remains, that is so lively and so convincing as a film, is really more than just a trace. It's I don't know, when you watch, when you look at films of your childhood, for instance, taken by your parents, what else is there, under 5, no memory, so films can be the only existing reality of this past.
Could you say it's being filmed, or allowing yourself to being filmed, or having something taken from you, is almost a commitment, a commitment to the being of who you perceived yourself as, because we've all seen ourselves in photographs or on television.
Yes.
That's me.
Yes.
Yeah, but I've committed to that act.
Yes, exactly. And just as Bazin says, I think it's really very true that even before cinema existed, the fantasy of everything being recorded and in a way that you can watch it again and check things, and all omniscience, of seeing everything and knowing everything and keeping in stock an archive of everything. It was a general fantasy that always existed. Because you can always think what is happening should be somewhere. It must be recorded somewhere. So it was God, conscious of God. He never forgets. He knows everything. He sees everything. But now, if you don't believe in God, there's nothing better than the camera. Is there? For recording. Yes. Salvation has been very often associated with recording, in a sense. That is, with being seen, being known, being understood. If you're present in some higher mind, for instance, or in some higher intelligence, you are saved. because you exist in more stable, higher, eternal form than the actual form you know. So, yeah, it doesn't mean that all reproduction is salvation. Of course not. I don't believe it. But it's very natural that very efficient tools for reproduction be associated with salvation as a fantasy, because exactly for the reason that Bazin invokes, that is preservation. And if it's whole, it's better. You know? The better the image, the better the preservation. So if you can't have the body itself, at least you can have perfect image of the body, or complete image, or living image is even better. And, well, you could. There's an endless list of artistic, literary, or poetic fantasies of preserving through a moving image, much before cinema itself. Like you have this. Well, this is not before cinema, but it could have been this novel that I mentioned, The Future Eve by Didier Ladance, the artificial woman that you can, how do you say, trigger?
Wind her up.
Yeah.
Mechanical.
Yeah, I mean, like with a
Button?
yeah, the button you can activate it when you want,
yeah.
right? So this novel that you probably know by Adolfo Bioy Casares called Morel's Invention, Invention de Morel. No. It's a science fiction story where someone is after a shipwreck arrives on an island, and he sees very strange characters doing these things, and not even noticing him, in kind of a ball and ceremony in a beautiful house. And he discovers that every day they do the same. And actually, the explanation is that there is a machine that is triggered by the marées, the level of the sea, back and forth. And each time it comes back, it resuscitates all these images that are actually automatical reproductions of living persons that are no longer alive, but they gain a kind of immortality. So it's a mock immortality, and it's kind of a nightmare in a way, because you're always repeating the same thing, but still there's this idea of salvation through reproduction of appearance and moving appearance.
So this might be rushing ahead. What about the misrepresentation?
Yeah.
And that might be part of kind of the post-cinema that you're referring to. That we have the tools to, and being involved in cinema is the re-representation, or in times misrepresentation
of course.
Of the image.
The very possibility of realism as an idea involves the possibility of its opposite, right? Of illusion and deception through light, and that's precisely something that is in the stress that is put on light, and the role light plays as a central, revealing element. It is also the element of all illusions, so that cinema from the start is in between these two extreme possibilities of total realism, if such a thing exists, and dream, fantasy, and lie.